All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Esports and Coffee on our not regularly scheduled programming. Different day of the week and a much different motif, I might ask. We are joined by quite a few friends today, quite a few fellow coffee beans with us today. We decided to switch things up a little bit, right? So we have a very interesting, a very fun topic for today that we're going to go over. Um, I fucked up. That's the topic for today. So, what we want to discuss today is our motto for esports and coffee: do better, right? And that's what it is. We want to do better. We're not always going to be the best. We're not always going to be our best selves. We are all humans. We all make mistakes. So, we really want to take the time to discuss what happens when you do make a mistake, how to recover, how to learn from your mistakes and kind of move forward and past it, right? So for today, as always, join us in the Discord server. We've got a lot of good stuff going on in the server, and that's where a lot of our communication in between our podcasts take place. So join us in the server. Also, follow us on Twitter to stay up to date in case we do any more outside of our regularly scheduled programming streams as well. But now what we'll do, we'll kind of go around the horn here in case you see some new faces here who you may not recognize. I will kick us off. I am AJ, and you know who I am since you probably have been here before. I'm gonna kick it over to Jackie.
Hi, I'm Jackie. I am also co-founder of Esports and Coffee. I am the assistant director of Minnesota State Mankato. I'm gonna pass it to Brittany because she's next to me on my screen.
Hello, my name is Brittany Sills. I am the Chief Operations Officer of eSposure and the Executive Director of eSposure for All. And I'm going to pass it to Danielle, who's right underneath me.
Oh, hey. So I am Danielle Sarikis. I am also a co-founder of Esports and Coffee. I am head coach, director, whatever you want to call me, at Lawrence Technological University. And in the interest of organization, I'm going to pass it to Ruggles.
See, that's funny because you're below me in my screen, so I have no idea what people are looking at. So I don't know who to throw to next. Hi, everyone. Karen Ruggles. I teach at DeSales University in Easton. I'm from Easton, but in Center Valley, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour north of Philadelphia, an hour 15 minutes west of New York City. So kind of triangulated there. I teach in the computer science department. I'm an associate computer science professor. And about 5 or 6 years ago, I started our varsity esports program at DeSales, where we compete in League of Legends, Overwatch, Valorant. I also serve the RSAA, the Riot Scholastic Association of America, as one of the advisory board members. And I'll throw it to Eugene.
Hello, my name is Eugene Fryer. I am the Director of Esports and Gaming at Texas Wesleyan University in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm also an adjunct professor of esports at Texas Wesleyan. We're working on we have some classes already based on esports, and we're hoping to build a minor, working with Brittany's coworker, Danny Martin, on that. I also have the pleasure of serving on the board of directors for the National Association of Collegiate Esports. Our program just hit our 5-year anniversary, or like we like to call it birthday, last year, which we celebrated with a 24-hour stream where I was up for, if you count my anxiety waking me up super early beforehand and my exhaustion keeping me awake after, I was awake for about 32 hours at the end of March, and I still haven't recovered from it. So
Perfect.
I'm going to kick it to JJ.
I'm JJ. I'm the director of competition for NACE. I kind of oversee all the competition within NACE and NACE Star League. Most people should know me in the esports space, collegiate esports space. I'm going to kick it to Scott because I think he's the last one left.
Somebody's got to hit at the bottom of the lineup, so I'm happy to do it. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Scott Dorn, Spectrum Industries. We are a manufacturer based in the United States. We are a proud partner of NACE and NACAD, where I'm coming to you live from Boise. So Boise State University is hosting the NACAD annual convention this week. So I know everyone there sends their hellos, and they wish everybody here were attending. But no, excited to be part of this, and I was just told I've hit the threshold of exceeding the allowable fuck up. So I'm happy to do my part and share my experiences. And this is a great group. This is a great group.
It is a great group.
Yeah.
No one kicked it to me, but I'm gonna go. I'm Sari.
It's like,
in case anybody.
Wait, who are you?
Oh, hey.
That could literally be your tagline, Sari.
Hey, by the
I'm
way,
gonna go because nobody kicked it to me. Is that my tagline?
can I go with I fucked up by not passing it to Sari?
It's a great start. It's a great start.
Segue. Good segue for today's conversation. I'm Sari. I'm the former president of the Scott Dorn fan club. I oversee esports at Full Sail, and I do esports and coffee with a lot of these lovely ladies, and I'm just excited to be here.
excited to have you, Sari.
Thanks, Karen.
At least you got kicked off. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm going to kick it off right with what we're doing today. And we kind of talked about it. Scott's given us some solid hints. But, we do a lot of talking about like current events, things that are happening within esports, things that are happening within collegiate esports, things that are happening within gaming altogether. We talk a lot about gender issues. But the global thing that all of our messaging really points to and that we're really focused on is doing better, right? And that's vague for a reason. Not only do we want to make sure that we're doing better as humans, as individuals, and everything that we do in life, right? That's what we all want to strive to and focus to. we know that our industry, for all intents and purposes, is still in quite a young stage, and it's got a bit of a mess out there. And our goal and our structures, we just want to make the space a better place. The world itself needs to be a little bit better for kids these days, and I think that globally, taking one step at a time to improve ourselves, to improve our industry, and to improve our relationships is the right way to do it. And so for us, we picked this topic because a lot of the conversation outward is, should have done that. Well, you shouldn't have done that. Well, they really messed up. Well, that was not a good idea. Well, that shouldn't have happened. Cool. Totally. Very easy to do that. To look at something that happened that wasn't good and say it wasn't good, especially from the outside. But wanting to kind of spin it around and say, like, what about when you do something that's not good? I hate to say this, but we're all gonna fuck up. There's not anyone that doesn't. And so knowing the coping skills and the ability to recover and what you can kind of do to navigate those is helpful. But the other thing is, as you continue to move forward in your career, it might be mistakes that you're coming across, but it also might be something that you as a leader are seeing on your team. How do you coach somebody through it? How do you coach somebody through a mistake? How do you coach them out of the defensive phase that, you know, is a natural thing that's going to kick in? How do you coach them out of a fight or flight response and how that's going to kind of show itself? And for us, knowing when we were brainstorming topics and came across this topic, we knew we needed experts from the outside to help elevate this conversation. And we're really excited to have everybody here with us today. I'll tell you that we did hand select everybody that joined us today, and for good reason. They're all phenomenal leaders in their space. They offer a very a breadth of diverse voices in what they do and their experiences and what they've accomplished. And the only way that we're really going to be able to help anybody and help this industry is if we listen to each other and we learn from each other and we work together. So, like, even though Scott has fucked up more than any of the rest of us, we could learn from that, but he can also still learn some new techniques for how to kind of recover from that. So, you know, it's an example of how we all sort of share those conversations. But we want to make sure that we keep the tempo of not just here to bitch, we're here to learn. We're not just here to complain about the things that are wrong, but we're here to do what we can do to fix them. And even if those things are small, we're still going to do them and we're still going to make baby steps and we're going to all get better in the process. So today that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, you've made a mistake. How'd you handle it? What happened? How bad was the mistake? And I can't wait till it's my turn because, man, I have made some costly mistakes. But I think, Danielle, you're going to kick us off today, right?
Yes, ma'am. So thank
right.
you. So we all know that feeling. You're powering through, like likely overloaded, and bam, you'd realize, like, hey, I fucked up. Big time, right? So your stomach sinks, your mouth gets dry, and your heart starts racing. Before we can talk about how to recover from your mistakes, we have to talk about the moment so that we can straighten our heads out and have control in that moment and not just do anything super crazy. So, like, tell us about a time when you had a mistake and how it felt. And obviously, the big overarching thing I think that most of us in here we probably done, but try not to do, is take it to Twitter. So instead, we just communicate with each other. So anybody want to take this off besides Scott Dorn, because he already fucked up one time? So let's give him somebody else another opportunity to share their fuck ups.
Okay, I'm gonna start off because this is my favorite topic. Because I've learned over the last 3 years of accepting accountability. So when our program blew up after our first year, and I was told not to do this, but I was so excited. Because obviously you get a lot of student interest and you just want to please the students and the administrators. You know, you've got 120 students interested. Sweet, we can do this. No, you cannot. And I was told not to do this. But so we added more titles than we could actually handle. And one of them was our Overwatch title. And I dropped the ball so much that the students ended up resenting me. Our Overwatch team was very frustrated the entire semester. I had a horrible relationship with them. And I felt so bad for them. And I fucked up so much that we ended up cutting the team for the next year because it just wasn't a healthy environment for everyone. And I mean, I was stressed that entire semester. I would go home crying. I would wake up crying, not knowing what to do. I would have messages late at night and not wanting to look at them. Every time I got a message, I was just like, please don't be from an Overwatch player. What else did I do wrong? And I felt for them. It wasn't their fault at all. It was my big fuck up for not realizing that we can't have that many students. And I was just too excited to have the numbers. I wanted the numbers, and it hurt everyone all around. And I think that when someone tells you to go slow at first, you should listen to that and to not try and overreach, even though someone might say that you need the number. No, just make sure you know what you can handle first. So that was my big fuck up.
Yeah, so I can. Oh, you can go, JJ, if you want.
You can go.
Sure. So for me, one of our things is we work, especially with our nonprofit, we work with interns a lot. And I had the opportunity to work with one of the local universities here for their with their interns. And essentially, I give them a project to work on for the semester, and that's their grade for that class. Well, for me, the first time going into it with them, I truly, truly, truly underestimated what the students were going to be able to do. And then I also let them kind of run the cadence of everything. So those were like two big mistakes that I made. So I gave them a simple project and it was super non-creative, if that wasn't a word, it is now. But as far as I just told them to create a social media plan, like just create a social media plan for us, which is kind of, now in hindsight, that was super lazy of me, because they could have done so much more. And the second round, working with the interns, they had like the most creative project of anyone ever. But seeing their project at the end, I felt like I let them down very badly. I let them tell me, basically, I told them to check in whenever they were ready, so that we could just kind of keep the project moving, which ended up being like maybe once every 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And so we get to presentation day with the students, and I'm watching them present, and they don't even know how to say the company's name. And so I was embarrassed for myself. I was embarrassed for them. I just felt bad. And so that was definitely a learning lesson, as far as just, when you're in there with the students, you have to be able to guide them more, and then just don't underestimate them and giving them that challenge.
I was gonna pop in. Instead of like kind of recapping kind of like a mistake that I've made, I think it's more important to kind of talk about how you handle yourself, like immediately in the aftermath of that. Um, I oversee NACE. I oversee NACE Star League. There's something north of 18,000 students in our league. So if I make a mistake, it affects everyone. And don't ever try to hide your mistake. Like, you have to own it. Like, you made a mistake. The worst thing you can do is try to kind of push it under the rug or avoid it, because the longer it festers, the worse it'll be. So my recommendation and kind of how I handle it is, the second I realize I make a mistake, I kind of relay that to kind of all the relevant stakeholders. In my position, that could be the competition council and the board of directors. It could be specifically Michael Brooks. It could be relaying something to the students. But the first step is to be like, yes, something bad happened here. This was not intended. And then alerting all kind of relevant parties, and then immediately coming up with solutions. And if you make the mistake, you definitely want to be the one coming up with the solutions, because you don't want to go to like your boss or your stakeholders and be like, I made a mistake, solve it for me. It's more like, I made a mistake. These are the relevant solutions. Which way do you think we should step? How do you think we should proceed? Because you don't want to be causing problems and not giving solutions, and you don't want to hide it. You just want to own it, and you just want to start coming up with solutions as soon as possible. Solving the problem is much more important than kind of handling your ego. And I'm someone who's very prideful about what I do. So like, when I make a mistake, it hurts me, but I'm not going to let that get in the way of like solving the problems and making sure the students have the best experience possible, kind of within the realm of what I control.
I think
I like that a lot. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say I like that a lot, especially like the coming clean right away and tacking on to what everybody else was talking about, of like leaning on people when the mistake does come up. My mistake is a lot more simple than what everybody is saying. And I have a picture of it somewhere, but I can't find it. So I'm going to post it in Discord later. That's a teaser for everybody to join our Discord. This was probably 10 years ago. We were converting on campus an old Albertsons into a new building. Like it was going to be, there's sound stages and there's other things that are happening, but it was an Albertsons was getting torn down. And it was a big deal because we were like, we're using all recycled materials and we're able to utilize all the existing structure, which is like helping to save the environment. So we got a lot of great attention from it. And the mayor was coming and they were going to do the groundbreaking and a whole presentation. It was so great. So at the Albertsons, we had the whole area all fenced off because they were going to start construction. And then, they do like this scrims on the fence for the construction sites that you've seen. So I talked about it with my boss, his COO at the time. And I said, yeah, we could like brand the scrims. So like a better impression for like when the news was coming out and the mayor was going to be here and it was a whole thing. So I came up with a really great slogan to put on the scrims that said new creative spaces coming soon. And it had a cool pattern on the background and I printed it and went across the entire fence and it was so great. And I got to work at 5 a.m. and it had just gotten installed the night before. And I'm standing there and I'm looking at the site. I'm like, man, I'm feeling very proud of myself. And this looks so good. And then, hold on, Bodhi. Okay, you just take a charger. Sorry. And then I come out and then two of our runners who are like people that help with like running things around come out and they go, you put an extra M in coming soon. And yeah, I sure did. Totally spelled it completely wrong. It just says new creative spaces coming soon 400 times across a very, very, very large banner. My heart dropped to my stomach. I did what any good, strong, independent woman does and cried. And I just sat there crying, looking at it, knowing the mayor was going to come soon and the news is coming soon. And what was I going to do? And so I looked at the runners that were with me and I said, what are we going to do? And we're looking at it. We're going to figure it out. We went to Home Depot together in a giant full sail truck and bought all of the flower bed liner that we could find, which is kind of like a scrim material, but it was plain black. Cut it, ripped everything down, ripped the banners with the wrong spelling on, and just put up plain black. At the time, I drove a Toyota Yaris, and I shoved the banner into my car, which filled the entire. This is how big this thing was. Even though I filled the entire car. And then my COO walks out as we're getting everything started. The mayor showed up, and he's like, "Hey, weren't we going to brand this?" I go, "No, I don't think so. I don't." You know,
what you're talking about.
After the fact, I had so many people offer to proof my work anytime I needed it. And I appreciated that. But I'm like starting to feel like better, like, oh man, I got through it. Okay, thanks everyone. Then I get back to my desk. And at the time, like everybody called your desk phone. No one was really calling your cell phones. Oh, they used to only be able to talk on the phone via a wired connection. It's a whole thing. We'll teach you guys about it later. But I had like 19 voicemails of people saying, I just drove by campus and coming soon is spelled wrong on the new banner, like a million. And I just ignored every message. And yeah. So I'm not saying I handled that right, but that's my biggest mistake. And that really was a bad one. So just gonna bring that into the conversation.
Mine was over a very long period of time. I had a lot before I started doing esports stuff, but I'll focus on the biggest esports one. I researched our program for 6 or 7 months, and I was researching it I work in the Division of Student Affairs, but I was researching it for our athletics department because based on my understanding of what collegiate esports was in 2017, it made sense in athletics. So I researched it. I talked to anybody that would answer an email or a phone call, and put together a proposal to give to our athletic director and associate athletic director, pitched it to them. They very respectfully said, we don't understand this, so no, but we're very happy to help you with it. So I report to our VP of Student Affairs, and Dr. Hall was like, well, do you want to do it? Like, you've played games, you've competed before. I was like, yeah, absolutely. And this is where the mistake started. So this was, I guess, November 2017. I took the 15 years of experience I had working in higher education, and I was like, well, I don't need this anymore because I'm not doing that. Now I'm doing esports stuff. And I lost sight of who I was as an educator, or that I was an educator in a lot of ways, and built a program that was focused on competition, only competition. We want the students to get better at the games, but that's about it. Competition, we want to win. Competition, which is not really in line with the values of our division. Or our school. Like, our athletics department wants to be successful on the field, on the court, but like, it's about getting students ready for life after college. I didn't realize this mistake. So again, I started it probably November, right after my board of trustees presentation got approved, November 2017. Spring 2018, we were building the program to launch in fall 2018. I was recruiting. We have 7 teams. Here are our teams. Look at our teams. We're going to compete. Look at our teams. We're going to compete. All that kind of stuff. Students came here in the fall. We competed all fall, and we were competing through the spring. And I saw enough stuff that I should have realized it, but it didn't click until the spring. The fall was full of a lot of students saying, oh my gosh, we have an esports program. This is amazing. How can I get involved? And it was like, hey, do you play one of these 7 games? And they were like, no. And it was like, have a great college career. We're probably never going to talk again. And then we went back to our 7 teams, and it was compete in the teams and compete in the teams. But I remember very vividly, there was one week in the spring of 2019 where, when I'm on campus, if I'm on a video call, if you've been on a call with me before, I'm wearing one of my 9 orange shirts. If I'm on campus, I'm wearing a navy blue shirt or a navy blue hoodie, typically with Tex West Esports branding on it. The orange is better for lighting and my skin tone on a camera. So I was on campus wearing a Tex West, just so you know, on campus wearing a Tex West Esports hoodie or t-shirt. The same week this happened, 2 separate students saw my hoodie, and were like, oh my gosh, we have an esports program. That's so awesome. And it was kind of like, yeah, there are flyers and signs everywhere, but yes, we do. I'm going to a meeting right now, but swing by. This is where our office is. I'm going to be there till 9 p.m. Come by, let's talk. It's like, awesome. Both students came by that week. Both students came by during an Overwatch practice. Well, it wasn't an Overwatch practice. Our Overwatch team was playing together, but if you didn't know any better, it was a practice. And both students, like, we have 2 rooms. We're a small school. We have very small spaces. The blue room where my office is, when you're facing the door, you can see where I sit, and then you turn left, and the other 6 computers are in there. So both students rounded the corner, saw me, waved, and stepped in the room as the Overwatch team was, oh my God, get on the point, doing esports things. Both students stepped in, saw that, and physically recoiled. I met the students in the hallway, had a conversation with both students, and this is a summary of both conversations. Oh, like, I like esports and games, but like, I don't do that. So it was like, oh, I've made a mistake. And we didn't have options for people that didn't play the very limited focus of games that we had. So since then, we've grown to include more stuff, but that was, to me, the biggest, like, I have to change a lot of stuff. And thankfully we've done that. We're not exactly where we want to be yet, but that was like the turning point, really, in our program.
That's good. I put it in chat, but I'll say it to fill time. But I went all in on a Full Sail Magic the Gathering arena team, like, forced its creation and was adamant about its clearly up and coming success. I thought this was going to be a huge for the space. I was like, we got to be the first ones in. We got to be on the forefront of this because this is going to blow up. It's the same thing I said when I thought Josh McCown was going to be the next big quarterback in the NFL. So never listen to me in any of this.
What's the next game that's blowing up, Sarek? What's the next one? I need to know what game Nate should
To
go
avoid.
all in on.
I thought you were asking what game to avoid.
He is indirectly. I guess mine is more of a personal fuck up, and I think if you're in the Discord, you know this. I think I went completely all into esports, and obviously I'm perfect and do everything perfect in esports all the time. Mine is more so that I do not ever choose myself, and that is not who I am. Like, I value my health and wellness, and I kind of just completely lost sight of that all through this entire career so far. And I stepped into several leadership roles all at once, and I would say effectively pulled it off, but I am not in a place for myself that I feel healthy. And so I have since scaled back, which is funny because I scaled back and then enrolled in grad school. So did I scale back, Sari? So I guess just take a minute, pick yourself. It doesn't have to be anything super crazy. Don't throw yourself in all 100%. I'm saying this, I'm always going to throw myself in 100%, probably 150. So just take a minute, think about yourself, make sure you're doing what's right, because if you're not the best version of yourself, you can't be good for other people. Another thing I wanted to add is like, we all said it's really okay to fuck up. I think when you do mess up, it gives you a teaching point. It helps you be better, helps you grow from that. And so many people are afraid to take a misstep. A misstep is important because it gets you to the right step. So just keep that in mind, people of the crowd.
I think for me, I'll kind of go back to my coaching days because there was a lot I think that I could have done better. There was a lot that I could have improved on. I think one of the things that if you are out there and you know me personally, you're like, nah, AJ never gets mad. I've never seen her get mad before. Well, one day I got mad at my team and at my program, and I don't think they saw that coming, and I don't think I saw that coming, right? So I think that it also kind of stems from what Danielle was saying, where it did get to the point where I was not choosing myself enough. I was not taking care of myself enough. And it got to the point where I wasn't recognizing my own emotions anymore. I wasn't recognizing the person that I was anymore. And there was it wasn't even an argument that was going on. It was more of a tiff between some of my athletes that was happening. And I stepped out of my office and I kind of flipped a lid, so to speak, and that sounds bananas coming from me, right? Um, and at that point in time, I flipped my lid. Um, their eyeballs probably got as big as their heads at that point in time because again nobody really saw that coming from me, and at that point in time I realized what was happening in real time and what everybody was saying, like pit in my stomach. I was like, yeah, definitely that should not have happened. Should not have blown up at a bunch of college students. Um, so at that point in time, like immediately kind of realized what had happened, and kind of like JJ had said, like immediately kind of own up to what had happened, owned up to your mistake in real time. So at that point, I did take the time to walk to my car because I was an underground dweller in the caves where my esports facility was. So I went into the underground like a cave person, cried in my car for about 10 or 15 minutes, then came back. And they obviously were very well aware of what was happening. And then like really just came back and just had a very human moment with them and really had a heart to heart with them. Um, so I think it's also okay for your students. I think it's okay for your students to see you be a human. I think it's okay for your coworkers to see you as a human. I think it's okay for your supervisors to see you in a human moment. I think it's difficult and is hard if you're put into a position where you feel like you have to be the best at all points in times and that you have to present yourself at your best at all point in times, because that's what's going to lead to blow ups and breakdowns and being overworked and being burnt out and lead to even more major fuck ups than flipping a lid verbally at your college students, which I don't think any of them are watching, but if you are, still apologies from me for doing that. I won't do that again.
Something I wanted to tack on to AJ's story. I'm not a director anymore. I was at one point, but I think it's important to know that, like, when you make, as a director, when you make a mistake, and it's in front of your students or in a way they can see, it's our jobs as educators, as directors, as leaders in the space to show them how to act. And if they don't see you kind of publicly own up to your mistake, at least to them, right? Like in her example, like she made a mistake in front of her team. If she didn't do that and she didn't take the time to acknowledge that in front of her players, do you really think her players would have learned the lesson of like, maybe I need to own up to the stuff that I'm doing? Like, it's our job to be role models for them, and it's not always easy, but it's something that needs to get done. It is an obligation of being in the space.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback off of what AJ was saying as well, in terms of the environments that we enact those mistakes. Because mistakes, honestly, it could just be like that. Like I took a misstep. It was a true mistake. I'm sorry for that behavior. But a mistake can also come from a calculated risk. So you say like, oh, I really want to try to go for this. I don't know how it's going to work out. So Magic the Gathering didn't work out, but like it was a risk, and you used resources towards that to like kind of leap as a team together. So one thing that I was thinking of, kind of coming into this space was a lot of times I hear this idea of allow yourself, right? Allow yourself to take this risk, or allow yourself to fail and forgive yourself for that, like sort of ahead of time. But aside from that, I think that that's an important space to just sort of place yourself in, and that comes through just self-reflection and like loving yourself and all of that mushy stuff, which is very, very important. But it's also important to be in a community, whether it's your students or whether it's your supervisor, who allow that risk taking and allow that failure and recognize that. And I think in particular for people who are marginalized within an industry, whatever industry you're in, we happen to be talking about esports, there is already this pressure to perform and validate yourself and your position just by being 100% every single time and like nailing it 100% of the time. So I think that pressure is so relevant, just to prove that, whether it's to yourself or to your peers, to your students, to your superior, to your family, like that this is right. This is where I belong. This is like, I can do this. And everybody knows you can do it, right? Like that's why you got the job. But at the same time, there's this continual proof, right? To say, yes, like, look, here's a reason why, and it's just consistently like bullseye every single time. So I think that it's just as important to allow yourself that forgiveness, or like, hey, I messed up, it's okay. Like that's what everybody does. Like that is like normal, but it's also equally as important to recognize that you are in a community that allows you to do that. So if your superior is not open to that, or holds you to a standard where you cannot have a mistake and go to them and be like, wow, I really messed up, and like JJ was saying, here's something, I'm going to be active about this, and I'm going to try to minimize the damage, or whatever the case may be. If they're not responsive to that, that's in a positive manner, then that's a toxic environment. And then the same thing for you sort of have to sit back and say, well, why is this the community that I belong to, or why is this culture here? How can I dismantle that culture? So if your students have that same space, I think from my experience, most of my esports students are just like, thank you for making this space for me. They know how hard I work, so maybe that has something to do with it. But there's also this, this relationship with the students, that they are a little bit more forgiving, I feel like, just as a body, especially if you own up to it, because I think authenticity in particular is very specific to the esports persona and the community. So if you're just kind of like, flipping lids on people all the time, and like, oh, they know I'm sorry, and not owning up to it, then that's going to be a problem. But I do think there is something to forgiving yourself, but also making sure that your community is in that space to allow you to do that.
Real quick on the supervisor thing.
Yeah.
I super agree with that. And I was fortunate to learn early in my career that people don't leave jobs, people leave supervisors, or people leave the community they work with. So I super agree on that.
So you guys have all been amazing. Those are absolutely phenomenal examples. And when I was approached on this topic, three things jump out at me, and it's ETA. That's, I guess, what I've come to call it. But emotion, talking too much or first, and making assumptions. So that's the ETA piece. But too many times when I was early in my professional career, you allow emotion to kind of dictate how you respond, and you don't take time to understand everything that may be going into the situation, right? So you respond without all the facts. You respond in an emotional manner, and it puts somebody in an uncomfortable position on the other side. And I think those are the ones, and hearing a number of the examples, you recognize too late, right, that impact you made on another person. And there's nothing more humbling than going back to that individual, whether it's a minute later or a day later, and saying, you know what, that's on me. I handled that poorly. I was not professional. And there's certain conversations that I'm sure all of us have had in our careers that really it feels like it happened yesterday, because it was so impactful to me as a person who was involved on the wrong end, and handled it poorly. And unfortunately, it takes some of those learning experiences to allow us to move to a better level. Additionally, early on in career, right, you want to demonstrate that you can be a success. You want to demonstrate I can work my ass off. You want to offer your opinion and show I'm intelligent, I'm accomplished. And sometimes you're not allowing the situation to come to, kind of the fullest step. And by talking too early, you're missing an opportunity to share your perspective, and to collaborate in the fullest. So, and most recently, you'd think after many years, you're avoiding that assumption, right? Don't make assumptions. I can say just recently we had a project that we're working on, and in a manufacturing setting, it can be a little bit different than a professional setting that many of you are operating in. But an expectation that something was going to get done and get into a manufacturing schedule, and expected that it was taken care of, only to come and find out a month later it didn't happen. And the individual on the other side didn't realize it was their responsibility to do it. Unfortunate situation, but 100% on me for not clearly, delineating what everyone is supposed to be doing as we walk out of a meeting, right? So what is the expectation walking out of the meeting? What are we going to do? When are we going to do it? Who's responsible, right? And unfortunately, that step got missed. And those are great learning experiences, but you also have to recognize you're 100% accountable for that situation, why you ended up there. Those are the things, I guess, that hang with me. And to me, that acronym has most of the time, not always, but most of the time, been a great reminder to me that you can check yourself really, really quickly just by remembering ETA. And I wish I didn't have to remember them, but that's because I effed up, right? So
I love that.
love
I
that.
actually want to take the
Mhm.
ETA away. So thank you for sharing. I know sometimes it's hard to express emotions and your fuck ups with other people, but I think that's what our round 2 is about. So you fucked up. It's now recovery time. How do you recover in that moment? Looking back, are you happy with the recovery, or do you wish you could have handled it differently?
I feel like I always wish I could have handled it differently, even no matter they're in everything. But I think that's a common thing maybe for humans to do, is to always stew and look back at the one thing that didn't go right instead of all the things that did. I really like what Scott just said about like taking that moment to pause, and Bilski's echoing it in the chat, and Brooks is also echoing in the chat, just kind of like sharing the responsibility. I've gotten that actually from Jackie a couple of times, where she's like, we vent to each other. We have things happen at work, all of us girls. And Jackie's been like, I've decided I'm taking the night, and I'm going to worry about it in the morning. I can't right now, and I'm just not going to. And I have this tendency to feel immediate all the time. No one put that on me. I just put it on myself. And I am trying to do better at like taking a pause and a breath before responding, because I almost always, if I don't do that, hate the way that I've reacted or responded. And I will say the other thing is that, I tell my coming soon story a lot, because to me, I think it's important for, as a leader, for everybody to know that, oh, I've made mistakes and they've been costly. And so I don't want anybody to feel afraid to make a mistake. Um, I want them to be afraid of not telling me that they made a mistake. And I want them to be afraid of not being able to recover from a mistake. But I don't want anybody to be afraid of making the mistake. And so I try to share my weaknesses in the hopes that it feels a little bit safer in that environment. Because the worst thing of it all is for something like that to like weigh on you, affect your mood moving forward, to not be able to shake it off and go back to the project or address things moving forward. And so like the shake it off process or the recovery and bounce back process is interesting, because we're by nature, I think we're stewers, like we stew on it. And so I don't think I have a tip. I think I'm still learning that part. But that just being able to communicate and not hide from your mistakes, I think can help other people feel comfortable with theirs.
I think it's
I think
important.
there's.
Go ahead,
Go
Eugene.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, my dog's barking. You go ahead.
Okay. I think it's important to be able to look back and understand you could have done things better. Like hindsight's 2020, and if you can't look back on the situation, figure out what you could have done better, that's probably a problem. But as a general rule, like as long as you attacked the situation kind of like in earnest, and it wasn't like a careless mistake of being lazy, but like you actually put your best foot forward, again, you should be able to look back and see what you could have done better. But I don't think it's something that you should punish yourself for, right? Like you apologize, you correct, you move forward. But the only time I think you should really kind of let it bother you is if it was just being careless. But if you're honestly making an effort and you're honestly putting your best foot forward, I don't think that's something you should really punish yourself over. Like in Sarah's example of Magic the Gathering, like she made a calculated risk, right? Like she went ahead and this was the way that she was going to move her program, and it just didn't pan out. But like to me, that's not something that you really punish yourself for, because then you can't make that calculated risk in the future when you may need to. So it's important to be able to look in the past, but it's not. You shouldn't be crippling yourself over it. Is all I'm trying to say.
There's a lot of function in failure, right? My dad used to always say, "It's all right if you lose, as long as you don't lose the lesson." I'm a big believer, especially in the work that we do. Realistically, on a day-to-day basis, we don't deal in life and death. So if you've got a problem that's huge tonight, it's going to be there tomorrow. The ones that won't be, you'll know. You'll know. We had I'm not to delve too much into it, but one of our students last fall, their parents said, "Hey, you're done. You're out. You have no place to live. We're not paying any your bills. We're not paying for school." Yeah, we work late that night. Most nights aren't that night though. So I'm really big with my staff. Hey, I have an assistant director in my department. Go home. Oh, no. I'm on that grind set. I gotta. No, you're not. Stop it. Go home. Like your work expectation now is to go home. So having those boundaries, I think, is helpful. But I can say that I'm really good at that right now because I wasn't for the first 12 years of my career. And I know the impact I had on my mental health, my physical health, still recovering from physical health, my marriage at the time, my friendships, like it can impact everything. Because realistically, the biggest person that's going to have an impact on your day-to-day life, aside from your significant other, is your supervisor. So back to what Karen was saying earlier about toxic work environments, right? But also we spend so much time at work that if we don't let ourselves take risks, like we've talked about already a little bit, if we have ourselves so constricted and confined that we have to, it's going to negatively impact everything. People in the esports space, especially the collegiate esports space, I feel get too caught up in playing the busy Olympics sometimes. Oh my God, I worked 72 hours yesterday. Stop. Like, breathe. Like that's really, really big for me. If a new WoW expansion comes out, my boss knows I'm taking a week off. Me and my wife are going to be degenerates. We're going to meal prep. She does it like 2-3 days. I do the full week. And we're going to do that. That's what we're going to do. Diablo came out last week. I took today off. I have tomorrow off. I have an alarm on my phone so I can walk around, because other than that, I'm playing. Because I know Monday, when my new assistant director starts on Monday, I need to be there, and I need to be there for them, and we need to get ready for the fall. So it's self-care is all this is, and allowing yourself to make those mistakes, whether they're calculated risks or just fuck ups, like, is huge. And my last point too, Sari mentioned this earlier. I say this to our students all the time. I can give you a lot of advice about a lot of things because I fucked up a lot of things, but I'm still here. You know, we talk in our program about social capital a lot. No matter what mistake you make, barring some wild emergency happening, no matter what mistake you make, you're still here tomorrow, and you still have social capital. You might have gone down 10%, you might have gone down 90%, but just like getting money back in your bank account, you can earn that back over time. So once the next day hits, what's the plan for earning that back? That's how I look at it, from a lifetime of having a low account.
Absolutely. And I agree as well. You know, if you aren't making mistakes, then you probably aren't challenging yourself. And that is what, you know, prevents you from growing if you're not doing that, putting yourself in those positions. And then when you do make mistakes, being honest with yourself. You know, after we do a production, we did an event today with our interns, and at the end of it, you know, we asked everyone to say, I said, hey, you know, I have feedback for everyone, but I'm not going to give you my, you know, improvements today. We're going to do it next week, but I want you all to tell me what you think you could have done better, you know. And then even as the interns were telling me what they could have done better, I listened, and I was like, okay, you know, actually, I think that was on me. You know, I think I could have coached you better. I could have led you better, so you didn't make that mistake. So it's just a process where we're all able to work together. You know, like you were saying, Eugene, it's not life and death, but this is something that you're serious about, it's something you're passionate about, and you want to continue to improve. But we're all working as a team to get it done. And so you have to be able to have that self-awareness within yourself just as much. I will say that, you know, of course, when you're doing different events, there is prep, but a lot of that stuff is in the moment. And so it's, you know, sometimes you can step back and take a breather. But oftentimes, you know, you have to be on it, and you have to be able to get in there and just keep moving and moving and moving. And so the way I handle a lot of it is after those events, or after I have maybe I have an interaction that I really have to think about, you know, I go back, and then I kind of in my head, I was like, okay, what are the different ways I could have handled it? And then I just kind of judge, okay, what were the possible outcomes? And that's how I just decide, you know, moving forward, just kind of how I could possibly handle it. But you don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much because that can drive you a little crazy. But definitely just kind of be critical of yourself, so that you, with the purpose of being better in the future, and make sure you're in an environment where people are also taking accountability for themselves as well. Otherwise, you'll feel like everything you're doing wrong, and it could really be the leadership.
Yeah, and sometimes everything solutions sometimes take a little bit longer than the actual fuck up did. So like you have to trust the process. I think most of the people that I have chatted with here know I'm pretty impatient. I want it to be solved. I want to get through it, and I want to move on. Eugene, shush. So yeah, I'm gonna buy an orange shirt, and I'm gonna be you for Halloween. Yeah. Look what I wore for you, Sari.
I like it. It's my favorite shirt of yours.
Yeah. I got to get you one. My cousin's coming back home. So understanding that sometimes it's going to take a long time to fix it. Even if you screw up with, like, say, another director, and it's going to probably take time to repair that interaction / relationship with those people. It'll happen much sooner if you don't go to social media and complain about them on the internet, though. Pro tip.
We'll come for you. I love that everyone hasn't said that they're like everyone uses excuses, but in these scenarios, no one has used that, and you haven't blamed your students, you haven't blamed another person. You're not making the excuse that it wasn't my problem. It owning up to fault and mistake, I think, is the number one thing that you can always do. JJ, you said it right away at the beginning, that you own up to it right away. Don't let it fester. I think that's probably the number one thing to do. Don't hide it. Don't make it someone else's problem.
Well, I think
I like
similar.
that.
Sorry. Good.
No, it's okay. You go.
Similar to what Scott said earlier, I think as a director, if one of my people messes up, I did something wrong. They might have did most of the thing wrong, but I did something wrong by not setting clear enough expectations, by not training them correctly, by whatever. So I need to evaluate that with myself in addition to addressing it with my staff member. But also, I'm going to address it with my staff member. But when I go to my boss, I'm going to say, I messed up, even if it was 99% them, because I'm going to take care of my people. So regardless of what happened, I need to take accountability. I need to have accountability with myself and my department, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the big thing about, and especially in the way that JJ said it, of like right away, own it right away. And then because otherwise all of the energy goes into hiding or scooting or covering or back and forth or blaming. And that energy needs to go to fixing and moving on. And as soon as you just take it, own it, fix it, move on, then you get the ability to take that festered energy and apply it to the solution that you have. And the longer you delay that, then the wasted energy that you have, you know?
And I tell you what, I think Eugene and Brittany, one of the things that I took out of your comments, the lessons learned, the digesting of what happened and how it went, you know, I think there's a great experience that can be held by everybody who's been involved by saying, okay, what are the learning opportunities that came out of this? So good or bad, right? So the person who messed up, right, knows what they did at this point in time. You know, it could be me, it could be one of my colleagues, you know, it could be a peer. But at that point, what do we take away? How do we ensure that we improve coming away from this? I love the example of your dad, Eugene. I mean, the lessons learned piece is huge, you know, and for those who aren't going to learn, you're destined to repeat it over and over and over and over, right? So those people aren't going to be leaders very long. But the learning opportunities, being able to take that away and digest what happened and be honest as a team with what happened and how do you overcome that? And some of it could be arrogance and cockiness as you approach the situation, whether it's you know, maybe you're competing for an RFP on an event, you know, maybe it's a project that you think you should be able to land, and maybe it's just a competition where you go in fully expecting to dominate, and you know, you're 2 maps in and you're getting your butt handed to you. You know, right? So, you know, I can honestly say each one of those has happened at different points. But trying to use that to say, this isn't us. This isn't me. You know, we're all better than this and we're going to move on from this. They can be some of the best things for growth for individuals and teams, you know, making those mistakes and being able to move on from it. Where you're not going to is if you allow it to fester and drive your emotional state for weeks on end, and
leads to more mistakes.
You know, that's failure right there. That is going to be perpetual failure.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think a lot of esports professionals in the collegiate space are very passionate people. You kind of have to be to stay in it for so long. But I think, you know, there is an important distinction between failure as like a business side of, we went for this and it didn't work out, and failure when it involves people, because I think, you know, there's sort of two sides of that I want to hit, and one is like you infracting, you know, some kind of mistake. You're the one who messed up, and part of that, obviously, like we have been saying, is acknowledging it and saying, hey, I messed up, and I'm sorry about that, and these are the things that I learned from that situation, or however that kind of plays out. But understanding that, you know, you arriving at that I'm sorry isn't forgiveness, right? So that method of apology is you kind of inviting someone in to say, yes, I recognize that, like, it's okay now. So I think that that's important to not, you know, I've seen this kind of play out in my teams before, where teams sort of have a tiff or something, and then we kind of workshop it and play it out, and one person is sorry, but another person, it's still not okay. And that's okay. Kind of getting back to Danielle's point of, like, it might take a while, but understanding that your apology isn't immediate forgiveness, I think is really important when it comes to people's feelings, and understanding what did I do that was so offensive, and how can I kind of dial that back and kind of adjust how I'm doing to play with my team in a way that is positive, supportive, etc. So I think that that's something that maybe it's because we make all of like the little kids like tell your sister you're sorry and now hug and make up and now it's better, but like maybe that's just kind of built into our apology system. But I think as we start to get more mature relationships, whether that's in the workplace or in your home, whatever the case may be, it is important to recognize that, where you are emotionally is not necessarily where the other person matches up. And those types of recognition don't quite hit the same in the business side of the house. So if you try to go for this and it didn't quite pan out, I mean, people's feelings are hurt, but they're not offended. You know what I mean? So I think that that's important in that community space.
Apologies are only the first step to forgiveness, right? Like true forgiveness comes with the corrective action attached to your apology. If you sit here and you apologize to me, then you do the same thing to me tomorrow, then no, I don't forgive you. You're not sorry. Right. You're just going through the motions.
Exactly.
You should be a marriage counselor.
JJ.
That's his.
I could see
that is
career
other job.
change.
Career shift.
You hear that, Brooks? They're trying to get rid of me.
Sorry, Brooks.
Hey, Karen, I think
you would be terrible. Don't do that.
I mean, oh no.
Karen, you touched on something that's really important though. And that's, all of us can get wrapped up in ourselves, our emotional state, what's impacting us. When there's other people involved, you don't know the dynamic in most cases on what's impacting them 24 hours a day. We see that, we can have significant interactions, but we don't know those other 16 hours that they're not with us, what is happening to them. There can be a lot of things impacting them, and it may be short-term and it may be long-term, and it may be something that passes immediately. So I think trying to understand empathy as a leader is incredibly, I think it's one of the most challenging things early on in a career to understand. It's not something through school that they necessarily teach us, here's empathy, here's how you apply it. But that is one of those things for, peer relationships or leadership relationships that is something I wish that I had a better grasp of early on in my career, because you get consumed with strategic plans, goals, activities, your own workload as well, that you can lose sight of that really, really quickly. And that could really do some long-term damage to a team or to an individual relationship. And that interpersonal relationship, I think, is really, really important. So anyway, kudos for bringing that up.
And that's a huge point too. What both of y'all mentioned, like the quote unquote crazy behavior we see from people is a symptom of something else. There's a social psychology theory. I'm blanking on who said it, but behavior is a function of a person and behavior is a function of a person in an environment. And we don't always see those three pieces. We typically see the behavior and the person, but not the environment. We don't know what was being said in comms before somebody said something crazy during a match. Or we don't know what happened in their dorm room before they came to practice. Or we don't know what happened with our boss and their spouse before they came in and yelled at us in our mind for no reason. Kurt Lewin, thank you. I was like, well, first of all, I was like, Karen's gonna know. But that's so true, right? Like, it can be so easy to get caught up with. I think all of us need ego to be successful at what we do. We need to control our ego. That's fair too. As long as you got the answer, that's fine. Karen Googled it. We need to control the ego with humility. But sometimes the ego can get away from us because why did they do that to me? Why did they say that to me? I taught them better. Why did they act that way or whatever? But if we don't have the full picture, we're not able to address the real issue, and then we can't start working towards making it better.
And just real quick, Eugene, because I think that this is a very rich space. There is also, those infractions. I would love to assume just because somebody doesn't know any better, right? So let's say the offense was my students telling me, oh, you play like a girl, or something that is kind of off color, that you really shouldn't be saying those things, but they're young. Maybe they don't mean it that way. And that's kind of like a very mild one that could have very easily corrective behavior, but there are definitely much more severe ones that I've come across personally. I'm sure all of us in the room have come across and are not acceptable for many different reasons. So, I think it's important for people who are just starting out in particular. I think I'm trying to think of some of the listeners today who are trying to be the first program director. They just got their job, doing that, to cultivate that community of, this is our safe place. These are things that are in bounds. These are things that are out of bounds. Because at the end of the day, I'm very excited for the high school scene to blow up, because all of the lessons that the varsity basketball kids learn prior to getting to the varsity collegiate basketball court, I don't have the luxury of that just yet, in my esports team. So timeliness, words that you don't use, like things that you don't say, just those behaviors that it takes to get to that varsity court in high school, just aren't really there. So the skill set that my students get, which are still very pronounced, they get with mostly their buddies, you know what I mean? So what you say at a pickup game of basketball is much different than where you show up on the varsity court. And kids know that difference. We're very social beings. We know those spaces that it's safe to say this and it's not safe to say that, but we haven't quite found those spaces yet in esports. So I'm getting a whole bunch of kids who came up together saying things with each other that are not acceptable in my space. Right? They call it Ruggles mode. I walk in the door and someone immediately goes Ruggles mode. Right? So everybody knows the blinders that have to be put on, because I'm rated G. I tell them. So it's something that to be able to start off with those people and say, hey, these are the things I realize, where you're coming from. I appreciate that. That is a space that we value, but this is a space that we value too. And to use certain language is not okay. And in some cases, some of my young gentlemen and ladies, they don't even think about it. Right. And or some of my colleagues who maybe aren't like as woke, or whatever the case may be, might say something, and then I say, oh, just real quick, don't use that term, right? Or don't say that thing because of X, Y, and Z. And I've had myself corrected in such a way as well, and I'm like, thank you for making this space more comfortable for more people. So I think that that's another aspect to that community of just trying to say, this is what we value, like these are our tenors, and like let's build out from there. We're going to have little dings and darts coming in from all angles, but as long as we know authentically that we are trying to value these things, then we're going to be okay, because we can call each other out. We can make sure that everybody is in a safe place and heading in the same direction.
Let me say one last thing. I know I've talked a lot. I'm so sorry about that. But like the topic of expectations, one of my mantras is unspoken expectations will always go unmet. If you don't tell them what to do or how to be, don't get mad at them for doing something or being something you didn't ask them to do. And that's a huge thing with me with language. I tell our students all the time, I don't really give a shit if you curse. I really give a shit how you curse. Because there's a big difference between fuck versus fuck you. Those are two very different things. And we branch that out into different, I'm sorry, I didn't think about we're on stream, but we branch that out into different conversations as well about like what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and why. For us, if somebody says something that maybe they shouldn't have said, I'll always start with, what did you mean by that? And not like in a meme, like, what you mean by that? But like, what were you trying to convey by saying that? And then let's have a conversation about it. Because a lot of it, Karen, like you were saying, that they don't know any better sometimes. It's like, oh, this is what everybody says this. And not everybody's in this room. So let's talk more about that.
I think the point you made too about, which is really brilliant, and I'm definitely going to steal it, about unspoken expectations is very true, because I think what you're talking about, it kind of perpetuates itself, right? Where somebody says something they shouldn't have said. We don't bring it up, so we take it personally. We stew on it. Our feelings towards that person now have been continuously impacted and affected, and this person has no idea. Because they probably didn't even know that what they were saying in the first place or what they were saying in the first place. And so it starts that vicious cycle of tension and toxic feelings and behavior, because you're not communicating what was needed or what the issue was. And whether that comes from you being on the side of making the mistake or somebody making the mistake to you, being able to communicate on both sides keeps things from being like, are they mad at me? Do you think they are bothered by that? Do you think this happened? And it keeps you from being like, I can't believe you talk like that. Well, now I have a feeling about him and that's just what I'm moving on. But what if he didn't realize it and that lesson is now lost? We talk a lot about like zero tolerance policies for things. And in some areas, zero tolerance policies remove the teaching moments, right? So understanding from a conversation, especially at the collegiate side, kids are coming from all walks of life before they get to us. You don't know how they were raised. You don't know where they're from. We don't know where they are. We don't know if anybody's ever told them or taught them that you don't use that word, or if anyone's ever told them or taught them that that's not how you speak with somebody. And being able to have that conversation and to go through it doesn't just help you, but it helps the entire space and helps that person individually. And that kind of helps the continuation moving forward, you know?
Awesome. Well, we are certainly a little bit past time at this point, but I think the conversation has been very rich. I think maybe next time we do a larger coffee house with additional coffee beans, we may schedule this a little bit longer. But for the group, any last minute tips or tricks that you would like to share in terms of making a mistake, how to recover, what to do to help with mistake making as you move forward? I think one of the things that I have actually learned recently in therapy that has been helpful for me is because I do a lot of negative self talk, which we're working on it, right? But I think one of the things that I have been implementing kind of for myself is uh, having kind of truth statements. And whenever I find myself getting into maybe some negative self talk, is I stop myself and I go, you know what the truth is? I'm actually a hard worker. So like, don't aim for the stars and be like, the truth is I am the best membership director that NACE has ever had, right? Like to me, like maybe that's true, right? But it doesn't
It is.
feel 100. Okay, but like for me, like I'm not there to believe that yet. So like we gotta start like walking before we run. So you always gotta start with like the truth is I'm a hard worker. So maybe that is another little tip and trick that you can kind of put in your toolbox just to kind of help get you to a better space if you're one of those people that when you make a mistake, it ruminates and sits there and hangs out with you longer than it should, like with me.
And AJ, just to pop in on this, you are more than welcome to use this as well, but all of the listeners and definitely everybody in this room, if you don't find that your voice is strong enough to be like, hey, internal voice that's very negative and very strong and very echoey right now, to speak back to that, go ahead and put a Ruggles voice in there. I will happily be the internal monologue with this demon self and be like, listen, Ruggles said that I am fire, so you better shut up and sit down. And you could use that voice all day long. Anybody here, anybody listening, I could be your internal like go-to. If your voice is not strong enough, you just let me know. It's not a problem.
I think that's a good point too. You brought up a good point though. Finding your tribe, finding your community, and that's why we made this community to do better. I know I personally reached out to Ruggles when I was struggling with students, and she was there for me. And reaching out to someone to just vent, like if we said, don't put it on Twitter. Try not to put it on Twitter first. Let it sit a day before you do.
Yeah.
How do you feel about K-Rug too? We're trying to make that stick.
Yeah,
K-Rug.
K-Rug.
Mhm.
Post it in our Discord. We can have a bitch session.
I'm there.
Yeah, we're all there. We have said some things. I think that just, obviously taking a minute to think about things. It's not really I guess it's a fuck up for me, but I have to learn to say no to things. So that's a
No, it
big
was a
one.
complete sentence, by the way.
Yeah. And as women, we also don't need to apologize when we say no. And men do it too, but I think women inherently tend to do it. I'm sorry, I can't, I'm busy or whatever. So I promise I'll update you if I actually follow through with that, but it's good advice.
All right, for me, I would say I have two things. So one, when you're making mistakes, find empowerment in the sense of accountability. So if I make a mistake, I'm able to say, hey, I'm in control of making a better decision in the future, or maybe there is, depending on the situation, a possibility of fixing it. But really, just find that empowerment to own your mistake, and then be better from it. And then the second part of that is also to make sure that you are challenging yourself. Do things that kind of scare you a little bit, but they also excite you. So you may say, hey, I don't know if I can do it, but I really want to, or it would be really fun. Because what you don't want is your mistake to be that you backed away from a great opportunity because you undersold yourself. So that would be my 2 points.
I guess I'd throw out as well. I think when you talk about community, and I think this group does an amazing job facilitating community, not just here, but also at events and offline. So incredible job. But don't hesitate. If you sense somebody isn't in the right space, right? You can tell whether it's emails, texts, posts online, just take a minute and extend an arm and say, hey, need to talk. You're a kick-ass person. I mean, do that, because you don't know what's happening on the other side, and you'd hate to have it be too late. Somebody is at that edge. And I just, the last comment that I have is I think this group in particular, and the extension of this group, the people who are listening in, this community is spectacular. I've been parts of a lot of different professional and organizations, and I absolutely love and adore this esports space and the group of leaders that are absolutely crushing it. So we are so fortunate to have all of you and all the people listening in, being part of it. But keep kicking ass.
Thank you so much, Scott. And thank you to everyone that is here today. You guys are awesome. And for taking your time out to sit and chat with us and continue. And we definitely want you all back. And I'm stealing AJ's line here. Forums are back in our Discord, and also join the Discord 100 million times over, right? You want to continue to talk, we're all there. There's a ton of people there to support you. We do playlists, we have Ruggles Rewards, One Good Thing Wednesday. There's probably something else that's going to pop up, because that's what we just keep doing. Because right, hashtag do better. We want just to spread positivity, because there's so much negativity in this world. So thank you everybody that's watching. We're going to be back on June 20th to discuss power of allyship. I'm not going to be there, but they are. I'm almost done with class, don't worry. And if any of you guys want to plug anything that you're doing right now, or say, or follow you on socials, here's your moment. Here's your mic. Nobody took
last
it.
Round. Anybody want a last round?
Here's your mic. Take the mic.
I just want to thank all of you so much for just having us here, all of your support, for just the community that you all are building. I had the time, I was able to spend some time with you all at Full Sail's Hall of Fame. That was so phenomenal, and I never formally wrapped up with you or anything. But I'm still on the high that I experienced just from that time, being around you all, seeing how you interact with each other, how you lift each other up, and then just being around that whole environment that's been cultivated, so that you have a community of creators, is just so phenomenal. And in everything that I'm doing, and in the program that I'm building, I hope to take that energy into what I'm doing as well. So I thank you all so much for what you're creating, for having us here. I think everyone who is a guest with me on this podcast as well, because I've definitely taken some nuggets that'll keep me going, and hopefully allow me to help and inspire some others as well.
I love that.
Plug join NACE. That's my moment to plug for AJ and JJ, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sarah's like,
Esports.
don't
Well,
plug
don't
that.
say join Nace and then make that face. Join Nace.
I didn't know if I was supposed to say it,
but you
Follow
did
Nace
anyway.
on Twitter and stuff.
That's why I'm
we've
not in
got-
charge of membership.
We've got the missing
Me
ward
either.
out here. Twitter, that's the handle. We'll drop some Twitter handles for you guys if you join the Discord servers. You can follow some of our guests there, so you can continue to stay connected with them there. But now we all get to do our sign off. So are we all out of coffee, guys? Are we all out of coffee?
Is everybody out of coffee?
Or
I'm all
whatever
out of
you
coffee.
may be.
You can just hold a cup up
tonight.
and pretend, guys.
Yes, we're all out
Okay,
of
let's
coffee. Well, we'll see you guys on the 20th. Thank you again for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you then. Take care of yourselves. Adios.
Bye.
Thanks,